Welcome, welcome. We are going to be talking about something very significant today because we are still sitting in the eclipse portal. Okay, we're still in the eclipse portal. And we will be in the eclipse portal for some time because even though on February 17th we had the Aquarian solar eclipse and the initiation of the year of the fire horse because of Lunar New Year, we are looking at a conjunction between Saturn and Neptune that is also coming into very strong effect right now. And so there are so many different components to this that I'm actually really excited to talk about because what I like to look at in astrology and how the planets are behaving and what they're doing is I'm always looking at patterns. And I feel like most astrologers are doing pretty much the same thing. We're looking at what happened the last time this showed up. What did the dynamics of it actually mean? What is the big picture scenario? Like, what kind of patterns will be playing out on the collective? And then also, how can we expect these particular alignments to impact our own personal life? And so I've been studying astrology since I was 15 years old. And so, um, let's see, that is almost 30 years. That's a very long time to be studying astrology. And so it's a very big part of who I am because I have been able to map out so many different things in my world and been able to understand so many different things that are happening in my world with the alignments that are going on between the planets. And so even though we are definitely still sitting in the eclipse portal and all of this initiating fire horse energy is just kicking off, what I want to talk about today, and for anybody who hasn't seen my video on everything Aquarian solar eclipse, I recorded that last week. This week, we're going to be talking about the conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. And not just the fact that they are conjuncting, because honestly, there are patterns in which they will conjunct each other every so often, but it's really about the fact that this is at the 0 point. This is at the 0 point of Aries, the cardinal reset. Like that is the big theme here. And so, what other astrologers have been able to kind of pinpoint is that the last time this particular alignment has taken place, particularly with Saturn in conjunction to Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries, it has been 7,000 or so years. So that's kind of a big deal, right? And so in my eclipse video, I had talked about the fact that, we also had like a 3 degree of Pluto. I think we're at 4 degrees now. And then also, Neptune sitting at 0 degrees Aries. These two also have a really interesting way that they're playing out because of the fact that the last time that Pluto is where it is now was at the beginning phases of the American Revolution. And then also, looking at the French Revolution, the last time Neptune is where it is now was in 1861, which was at the beginning of the Civil War in the United States. So know that these dynamics that are showing up right now are absolutely pointing to paradigms collapsing and new worlds being built in their place. Systems that are no longer in alignment are breaking down and deconstructing because they don't work anymore. And there is an evolution, there is a revolution, and it is all taking place on the world stage. And I know that, like, for me, I've looked at this so many different ways because I'm a Libra. And so I have to look at like all of the different angles of this. And, I don't really know a whole lot of times on this planet that there's just been like this peacefulness and this love and harmony and, just everybody really respecting each other and caring about, the fact that we are all in this together. I don't really know of a time in recorded history where we can actually look at that as a precedent. But I do believe in things being worked out constantly, that things are always kind of being recalibrated, restructured, judged in a lot of different ways to help us reach into those higher places of consciousness so that we can return to this state of unity in which I believe the Christ light is here to support. Like, I believe that the messages of Christ and the messages of the Buddha and the messages of so many of these amazing ascended masters who have come to this planet, who have incarnated on this planet to support the evolution of consciousness among humanity, like, we are getting closer to something. But in order to get to that state of unified consciousness and the collective peace, love, harmony, seeking first to understand each other and being able to live in this balanced and fair way. You can tell I'm a Libra. I'm talking a lot about harmony, balance, and fairness. But I do believe that that is what most people desire. I believe that there are more people that desire peace than desire, combat and war and battling. I just believe that because of the way the ego is constructed, especially in a realm of physicality and materialism, it is it is a story that becomes about protecting my values. And if your values are against my values and your values are here to try to dismantle my values and what matters to me and what I need and what I want and blah, 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 blah. Like, this is where we become so separated from each other. And honestly, like, it's an illusion. It's all an illusion. And so when I see certain of like these planetary aspects come into play, it's like I can see how the illusion is also being dismantled. And that is also something that unravels over time as the illusion is being slowly dismantled. And there's fight back and there's pushback. And then we ascend to a higher level. And then there's pushback and there's fight back because there is, I don't think that you can necessarily have an evolution without hurdles to overcome. I can remember just in my own life feeling like oh my gosh, when I was little, I used to get terrible pains in my legs. Like, I would get a lot of like pain in my calves, pain, like my muscles and my shins and in my knees. And I remember my kids also going through that, them waking me up in the middle of the night because their legs just felt kind of achy and weird, and so, and it wasn't like every night. It was the fact that it would happen periodically. And I would rub their legs and I would like help soothe them and stuff. But what it really was growing pains. And we can see this happen in relationships. We can see this happen in our own bodies. We can see all of these things that as change is taking hold and things are being transitioned, there are also hurdles to overcome within ourselves and outside of ourselves. And living in this world among 8+ billion people is no exception. So the journey to peace and balance and harmony and love and care and compassion, we are on that path. We are getting there, but it is something that unravels slowly, because as it unravels, we also have to overcome hurdles in the process. And this helps us to build our resilience. This helps us to build, a deeper intention, a stronger purpose, a real true understanding of who we are in the process, which is what I think is actually like one of the most beautiful parts of it, is that we are all confronting something within ourselves, something that, there's a voice that is telling you about certain things, like, this is what you should do, and this is who you should be, and this is how it should go. And then there's another version that's like effortless, limitless, in divine flow and in sacred harmony with everything already. And we take ourselves out of that to do something, right? To actualize something, to push something, to make something mean something. And so this is the dichotomy of humanity. And I believe that this is the dichotomy between, the human self and the divine self. Is like, the divine self knows that there is no separation. Any separation that you observe in your life is an illusion. Anything that creates, inner disharmony or exterior disharmony is also based in an illusion. Your ego is also an illusion. And so as we watch these energies unfold, this year is going to be filled with momentum, and it's going to be filled with so much action and fiery energy, passion, enthusiasm, charged of just wanting to move that needle, move that energy, move to the next level and to the next state of being, right? So we're going to look at what Neptune and Saturn represent in this conjunction and how we're using it. And something I wrote down that I thought was really interesting because I took these notes just kind of like, I don't want to say going into like this, like, strong direct channel, but I'm always open to receiving. I'm always open to receiving, especially when I am planning to talk about something in particular, like, these astrological alignments or anything to do with prayer, meditation, and ceremony and priestesshood and such, and healing, all of these things. Like, there's such a big context to them. And so before I go into any type of video or training or whatever I'm talking about, I always want to open myself up to spirit to feel the essence of that sacredness come through me so that I am more clear and that I am more grounded and I am more, I would say, just in that alignment with the truth. Okay. And authentically so. But what I had written down is this energy, adding new structure to the vision, holding it together, and building up fire to ignite it into action. It is like heating an iron in the flames and then hammering it out to manipulate the materials and creating from that whatever you desire. That is the energy of this particular conjunction. And so let's look at what Saturn represents, because Saturn is definitely a more limiting planet. It has a lot more, and I want to be careful how I say this because Saturn also equals safety. So anybody who's been in my world for a while knows that when I talk about Saturn, I usually talk about like a disciplinarian masculine figure, so maybe like a strict dad kind of energy of like, you can only go this far, do not drive the car over here, like you're only allowed to spend this much money, putting more boundaries and restrictions around what you're doing. But like, even though there's parts of us that are like, I don't like, personally, I don't like restrictions. When I have restrictions, I tend to want to bust right through them. But I've learned to navigate things in a little bit of a different way because I'm a little older now and I have more experience. And as I am also a 3-line in human design, I also know that a lot of this is trial by error. And so what I do is I can see how like so much wants to be created. And then we're also being tested, like, are you sure? Is this correct? Are you sure this is correct? Are you grounded? Are you secure within this? Do you have stability? And we also have to look at the fact that like Saturn rules over Capricorn. And so when you look at like Capricorn energy, it's always wanting success. It is always building towards success. It wants the building blocks and then they want to assemble it and structure it out really perfectly so that they can build something upward. Whereas, like, when we look at Jupiter energy loves breaking through, loves the expansion, but also coming out of the gates can be a little disorganized and rather scattered, So it's like a lot of people look at Jupiter energy as like very superior and everybody wanting to be like, washing in the beautiful energy of Jupiter. But at the same time, Jupiter energy can absolutely scatter you. And then a lot of people look at the Saturn energy as like very restrictive and constricting and stuff. And so they want to break free of it. But at the same time, I would caution you against that because of the fact that Saturn is like double checking with you. Like, are you sure? Whereas Jupiter is just like running out of the gates. And I don't think that it necessarily has a focal point. Like it doesn't have like this really strong focal point. And we saw a conjunction between Saturn and Jupiter, I believe at the end of 2020, and it was around the winter solstice, which was a huge deal because they believe, other astrologers, that have studied more ancient astrology, believe that Saturn and Jupiter were conjunct at the time of Christ's birth. So that's kind of a big deal. These planetary alignments are important and they do result in some very big shifts in the entire paradigm of humanity. So anyway, so Saturn, yes, can be a little bit more asking you, like, are you sure? How do you feel about this? What's going to happen? It wants you to have a plan. It wants you to be organized, and it wants you to feel grounded and stabilized in what you are doing. It doesn't want to be all like wishy-washy, wobbly, and anything. And that's like, think about if you had a father who was, kind of like on your butt about being responsible and paying attention and being mindful of like how you spend your money and where you spend your time and how you do things in your life. Like, that is Saturn's energy. And what's interesting is that even though Jupiter is kind of like the opposite of that energy, Neptune, it also rings a very, very different tune than Saturn, also, because Neptune is all about like mystical, fantasy, dream-like. It also can create a lot of illusions in our life. So when I'm talking about Neptune, I want you to think of Poseidon. I want you to think of the deep waters, where Saturn is like climbing a mountain. Neptune is going into the depths of the waters. And so this can actually create a very unified collaboration if we work with the energies appropriately, meaning like you could be standing at the peak of a mountain and looking around and surveying the land to see exactly, like, I can map this entire journey out. Like, I feel completely grounded in that. Also being able to observe all down into the depths of the abyss, into the unknown, into the dream world, the fantasy world, the mysticism, the creativity. And so that's where I get like a lot of this energy of like, taking something that is very structured and hard and raw material, and then also sticking it in the fires of Aries, and then watching it like light up and become malleable, and then you taking that hammer and just banging it out into what you want it to be. That is the energy of Neptune. I'm going to use my creativity and all of the intuition, my dreams, my desires, my like whatever that magnetic pull is. I am going to align with that, and I'm going to infuse it as I bang out this metal, this hot metal with this hammer. And that is the energy that we are in right now, is we are bringing something into life. We are materializing our dreams and our desires into our reality. And so this can be a really, 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 really incredible time, because we know that the solar eclipse, every solar eclipse, is always here to help shift your trajectory in some way. It is here to kind of like maneuver your path a little differently. So it's like you had seen yourself on a particular path. You see like, okay, this is how this is going. Okay, da 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 da. And then over the past couple of weeks to a couple of months, you've started to see something else taking shape. You've had to let go. You've had to release. The year of the wood snake was very, very, very like, it was deeply healing, but it was also really tough because we were peeling away so many layers. We were having to, Neptune was in retrograde for 5 months of last year. And so just so you know that when Neptune, the planet of illusion and dreams and fantasy and creativity and intuition, goes retrograde, what it does is it actually helps to pull the veil of illusion back. So now what you have is an opportunity to see things in their truest form. You can see the raw potential of something because you're no longer disillusioned by whatever your ego is telling you, or whatever, you might be feeding into of what's happening around you. If you are impressionable, or if you have kind of bought into an ideology that all of a sudden you were like, whoa, 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 pump the brakes. Like, I didn't realize, I didn't know, I didn't understand. And now all of a sudden everything is becoming so crystalline clear to me. And so as we, went through the remaining months of 2025, we had to pass through all of this really difficult Capricorn energy. And I've just kind of explained a little bit about that in relationship to Saturn. Capricorn energy, we had all the personal planets move through Capricorn. And this was really putting us through a very, very tight space. It was like a squeeze of pressure because it kind of forced us to look at the remaining layers that were left behind in preparation for coming into Fire Horse. It's like you've got like these last little bits that you've got to deal with, which are fragments of your shadow self. And now we're kind of putting a mirror in front of you so that you have to look at it, because you can't take this part of you where you're going. There's no room for it. the vibration isn't the same, your mindset, your heart space and coherency, like everything is shifting. And so we're going to take December to really allow ourselves to see what those remaining parts are that need to be observed, looked at, discarded, released, or alchemized into something brilliant to move into for the future. And so, like going into 2026, we did not just leap into Firehorse. We leapt into Firehorse yesterday, which was February 17th, and the solar eclipse helping to kind of shift patterns, shift your life trajectory, your path, like something is changing in your life right now. What I like to do is when I'm looking at how something is going to impact my life, I want to look at the particular houses that are being impacted by it. So I know that like my rising sign is Capricorn. So I know that my rising sign is going to take over the 12th house. And I also know that that means that Aquarius is my first house. I do not have any planets or anything active in my first house. My first house is empty, but it is ruled by Aquarius. So I know that the solar eclipse in Aquarius, or anytime there is a massive alignment that is connected to Aquarian energy, it is showing up in my first house of self, of consciousness, of identity. And I can feel that absolutely shifting for me. I also know that because my moon sign is Aries, and I know that like how Aries is going to play around with my moon and that energy over the next, several years, to be completely honest, with Saturn and Neptune moving through this together. Saturn's going to move a lot faster. Saturn's transit through Aries will only be 3 years, whereas Neptune's transit through Aries is going to be much longer because it is an outer planet that moves much slower. The orbit around the sun is going to take more time. And so it's going to be in Aries for the next 13 years. So that is a big difference. Okay. But I also know that, like, for me, because of where my rising sign is, Aries is in my third house. So I know that this conjunction is going to impact my third house of communication, of thinking, of ideas, of travel, of just all of that kind of stuff, anything that is related to third house. So if you know what your rising sign is, you can move through the chart and you can kind of figure out, okay, if this is where Aquarius is, that's where the solar eclipse is going to be impacting me. If this is where Aries is in my chart, I know that this is where this conjunction is really going to be showing up for me. Okay, so let's look at Aries a little bit and why the cardinal point is like the most potent, I would say, because it is a cardinal reset. It means that like you're basically starting at complete zero. We are not just at the 0 degree mark of any of the 12 signs. We are at the 0 degree mark of the first sign of the zodiac, which is Aries begins on the first day of spring, which is the vernal equinox. Okay. So that is always going to be around like March 20th, March 21st, something around those days. Sometimes it shifts because of a leap year, but we know that Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It initiates spring. And Aries is a very initiating sign anyway, and it is a fire sign. It is a sign of independence, and not so much in the way that Aquarius is independent. Like Aquarius has to go off on its own and do its own independent thing. But Aries is like, I'm going to move fast and you're not going to be able to keep up with me. And I'm not going to let anything hold me back. And like, I'm going to just keep going. So Aries has this ability to move from like 0 to 100. And in that process, though, one of the things that can be challenging about Aries energy is that it definitely can have an arrogance and a headstrongness part, like a hot-headedness. And so it can leap into things and be very impulsive, where the Aquarius energy about like independence and going my own path and living my own journey and going to the beat of my own drummer, that actually isn't like this quick rapid thing. It's about just like breaking away, breaking free, where Aries isn't about breaking free. It's about, I'm going to do what I want to do. And like, there's no questioning about that, so a lot of the Aries people, a lot of people who have strong Aries in their chart is probably often considered to be selfish or one-sided, or they just kind of only care about what they want. And I don't think that's actually true about Aries at all. I think they have a very unique way of demonstrating their wants and their needs, but I also believe that there, a lot of this energy is going to come with maturity. Okay. And what's nice about that is that Saturn, because, Saturn rules Capricorn, rules the 10th house energy. And so with Saturn involved, Saturn is all about like wisdom, maturity, responsibility. So I feel like when Neptune and Saturn are kind of doing this hug, this conjoining of energy at 0 degrees Aries, where it's like, this is the 0 point of creation. You can do anything from this place. I think it's like, we can acknowledge that there is an impulsiveness. There is a direct line to like, whoosh, I just want to go. I just have an idea. I want to run with it. But I believe that with Saturn and Neptune being involved, they're actually going to support the fantasy, the creativity, the mysticism, the intuition, but doing so in a very mature, responsible, and wise way. And so to me, this actually feels like a beautiful configuration of energy that is showing up for us all right now, exactly at the same time of initiating the Chinese Lunar New Year of fire horse energy, and at the same time of us stepping into this beautiful solar eclipse portal with Aquarius. And in addition, we've got Venus holding a North Node conjunction as well in Pisces, which really supports us to allow the beauty and the joy and the pleasure and the feminine energy to start kind of like dancing through, because what that brings is flow. And flow feels really, really good at a time where you have such strong energy, where the strength of Aries and Saturn and Neptune are working together at the same time that Aquarius is going through this eclipse portal. Like, these are very strong personalities. And then you've got Venus kind of just like floating through in this beautiful conjunction with the North Node in Pisces and saying, like, I'm going to soften. I'm going to add some flexibility and malleability, and I'm going to add flow and beauty and like just this beautiful magic. It reminds me, it's like I can feel like this passionate, fiery energy. And it's almost like you could hear kind of like the drumming of getting ready to go like into battle or something. But at the same time, all of a sudden this beautiful feminine being shows up. And now I hear like the harps and, and she's just like, no, we don't have to do this. We don't have to get all crazy and wild. Like, we're stepping into spiritual warrior energy where we are actualizing our reality in such a huge way. But at the same time, we don't have to have like these massive battle cries going into it. And I think we've seen recently in the energy that, going into battle is not the greatest idea. I do believe that it's important for us to advocate and stand up for our truth and stand up for what we believe in. But I also think that we've got to really put a lot of care and intelligence behind it so that we can see a bigger picture, because brute force is not going to answer. Like, it's not going to be what wins in the end. Okay. It's not going to be the thing that is celebrated in the history books of like when we've seen different things happen in the past. And, there was this battle and, all of these people, they won. Oh my gosh, they won because Victor writes the history, right? So you see certain battles of history and it looks like this very victorious thing. I don't think any of the things that have been battled about in recent history will go down in the history books of like, oh, wow, they saved the day, how victorious. I think this is a message of the fact that you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And there are definitely important parameters to take into consideration. We don't want to just let everything be a free for all, but we also want to respect human life. We also want to respect ourselves in the process. Like, I think this is a huge message about respecting ourselves, respecting who we are as souls and spirits and hearts and minds and bodies. These very beautiful humans that are evolving on this path of evolution, that we are moving through times of history that has never been seen on this planet before, and to hold a torch and light that torch and carry it forward, to bridge a path towards that harmony and that love and that joy and that compassion for each other, rather than using brute force to get what we want in the end. I don't think that's actually going to be the way to get there. And I think that we've seen in history that there has absolutely been a time for brute force. And I believe that there's also a time for standing down. And I think one of the biggest problems is that, there is less discernment and there should be more discernment. I would love to bring more discernment into the picture here, and just like, let's take a step back, let's take a deep breath, and let's be discerning of how we want to execute our ideas and our vision and our wants and our needs and our desires. And that's what this conjunction is going to do for us, is it's going to actually now put you in a launch pad of everything that's been cleared, everything that you desire to manifest, everything that has been kind of like washed away, and now everything that you desire to come into fruition. Like, there is a bridge that has been built between those two areas. And so also within you, you are changing. You are becoming somebody different and new. And it's going to be quite extraordinary to see how this unfolds over the next coming months, because this is the real deal. This is absolutely happening. It's another phase of evolution, and it is a big one, because it is not just like, oh, my own personal evolution and what I see happening, in my relationships, in my bank account, in my career, with my family, and da 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 da. It is literally affecting each of us individually and all of us as the collective. Okay, so I do want to just share really quick one thing that I did yesterday for the solar eclipse. And if you catch this, like, please just know you can do this at any time that you feel called to do this. I want you to like follow your intuition. But I was home all day yesterday. And so I didn't just want to light a little candle. I wanted to light a very big candle. And so I did. So this is the other one. I didn't like this one, because I have two of like, different colored candles and stuff like that. And so I chose white to symbolize purity and new beginnings and kind of like that 0 point energy. But the reason why I wanted to do like such a big candle was the fact that, yes, I was going to be home all day. And so I could keep an eye on it. So if you're going to do this, like, know that this thing is going to burn. Mine burned from like 11:30 in the morning till around 9 o'clock last night. So we're talking around like 9 to 10 hours of burning time. And so that's why we want to make sure that we're going to be home and we're going to be able to keep a good eye on it. I had mine on my altar all day, but what I did was, this was the intention. I dressed it with very particular oils. Now I do have a very special blend that I make. It's an abundance blend that has like cinnamon, clove, hot red pepper, thyme, like just all sorts of herbs and oils. And then I use sweet almond oil as the carrier. And so what I did was I took the candle and I just I dipped my fingers in the oil, and then I just like, I dressed the candle, and all of the motions that I did were moving upward. And it was like, my message is going straight up into the heavens, straight up into the limitless potential of divine source, God, universe, whatever you want to call it. And then I said a prayer over it. And the prayer was basically like, when I light the candle, I am connecting with the highest potential. Okay. The highest potential, my highest timeline, in the quantum fields, like the highest potential. And then I say a prayer of what I desire. I bless the candle with all the goodness of authenticity, of purity in my heart. Like, this has nothing to do with my ego. This is like my pure heart's intention and desire. And then when I light the candle, what I imagine is I'm basically calling down the energy of the infinite. I'm bringing that into my home, bringing that into my space. It's an invocation of the God and goddess energy coming down together within me and into this candle. Okay. And then what I envisioned was, as the candle burns all day long, as it burns, like I would stare into it. I would gaze into it. I would just, honestly, sometimes I would just walk by it, because if I was walking through the room, I would just smile at it and be like, look at you go. Like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And really just imagining how, like, as the candle burns down, that energy of coming down into the home, into my space, into me, into my family, like now it's grounding, it's integrating, it's anchoring in. And then I saw it get very, very, very low. I had taken my shower. I was getting ready for bed. It was around 9 o'clock. I moved it into my bedroom onto my nightstand. And then a little after 9, I noticed that it had gone out. And so I was just like, I sat there for a moment and just said thank you, and really felt that in my heart, like, thank you so much. Because I could feel the energy of what I had called in terms of, lighting this candle and imagining pulling down the infinite potential, the wisdom, the sacredness, the holiness of all that there is, and then merging that with me, my consciousness, my home, my family, my intentions, my desires, my heart, my spirit. And then once it finally like burnt down all the way, it was like, and it is done, and it is done, and it is done. And it just felt like such a beautiful, beautiful completion for me. And then I also got a letter in the mail yesterday, something that I had actually been waiting for, related to a debt that is not my debt. And so I had actually been praying on this, that I would receive some information that would help me move this process along to eliminate this incorrect thing that has shown up in my life. And so I really felt yesterday that this is all getting cleared up, and that I just felt very grateful, and I feel beautiful about the energy that is showing up for us. And your part in this is to think limitlessly. Your part in this is to recognize that you have infinite potential, and that your dreams matter, your creations matter, you matter, everything that you want and that you believe, like, it all matters. So get your beliefs really on point, because this shit is real. Okay. And I encourage you to do the candle work, and you can use a smaller candle if you prefer not to use this like ginormous thing. I had I love to work with candles, all kinds of candles. So please use something that calls to your heart and that feels good, but also something that you can manage very safely in your environment. Okay. So I love you all so much. For those of you who are new, please hit subscribe if you have not yet subscribed. And also hit that little bell there for notifications. So that way, when I put my stuff up here, you are notified and you can be in my world as soon as new trainings and new videos unlock. Enjoy this energy, think big, dream big, love yourself, love each other, and I will see you in the next video.